Good morning, ¿cómo están? Aquí estamos con Cafecito once again. We're at a restaurant, so we're going to have some background noise, but we'll do well. We'll work with what we've got. I am so excited to have two guys here today. Both of them are Edgewood ISD board members. We have Dr. James Hernandez and we have Frank Espinosa. And we're going to simply talk about Edgewood. First of all, I want to get started with you so that the community that sees our Cafecito will know who you are. Okay, so I'm going to start with you, Mr. Frank. Tell me a little bit about yourself, the schools you attended, and what you did. You don't have to be detailed. Just give me some information about yourself.
Okay, so Memorial graduate, class of 87.
Okay.
I went to school, got my degree in accounting, worked for Valero for 25 years, and here I am on the board now, 10 years.
Good for you. Thank you so very much, because as we know, board members do not get paid a penny, so I truly appreciate your time. Okay, Dr. James, tell me about yourself, a little bit of your schooling and what you're doing.
All right, so my name is Dr. James Hernandez. I graduated from Kennedy in 2010. I graduated from Our Lady of Lake University in 2013 with my undergrad in psychology. I got my master's degree in Salt Lake City, Utah, master's in education, graduated 2017, and I just recently graduated from UTSA with my PhD in interdisciplinary learning and teaching from UTSA. And I've been on the board now going on 8 years, and I'm currently the board president.
Once again, we're talking about Edgewood ISD. What are your goals? There's so much. Here I am as a retired educator. I know of all the trauma going on in our profession, going on in my profession. What is Edgewood's goal, and what is Edgewood doing to fight what's happening to the public school system?
Well, I'm all about finance. So as far as school finance, I've seen a big change in our budget was 110 million 10 years ago, and now we're down to about 90 million. So it's dropped quite a bit. It's dropped because of school enrollment and then funding. So it's gotten tough. It's gotten tough. They've been very creative in trying to find that, trying to stay away from being in a deficit. So it's tough.
You know, and people continuously ask me, why is Edgewood's enrollment so low and why are they shutting down schools? But my response is always, when Judson and Northeast start shutting down schools, it's an educational program. It's beyond.
Right.
Beyond that.
It's bigger than just Edgewood, but so the census will show you that birth rates are declining.
Of course.
And we're not seeing as much activity. Not as many kids here with charter school reports came in. They took a big chunk.
You see, but Edgewood, as I was growing up, even when I was teaching, Edgewood always had Holy Cross, St. John Boston, St. John Birchwood, and we worked with them. We always worked lining up with them, in coordination with them. We worked with these people. But now the system is, in my comments are, the system is broken. And on purpose, our public school system.
Absolutely.
So how are you dealing with this?
Yeah, so I don't come from the finance perspective. That is important. That is one of our duties as board members to watch the budget. But I do come from more the perspective of the teacher and student experience. So I think now with the current change in funding with vouchers and a big push towards what the state's calling school choice, I've really been focusing on teacher retention. So the way we treat teachers, and I myself as a full-time teacher, the way we treat teachers really matters on how long they stay in our school, and the longer a teacher has to build relationships with the community and with the students, the better they tend to, they tend to work with our students. But also from a district level, is if we focus on treating our teachers really well, and they choose to stay, and they choose to want to contribute to Edgewood, because I believe that if someone's a teacher and they've been doing it longer than 1 or 2 years, they love what they're doing. The problem is, when I hear teachers express that they love what they're doing, they love the students, they love educating, but they don't necessarily like being a teacher anymore. Because
the system is broken.
Well, I mean, that's another topic. I can jump on that one after.
Correct.
For teachers that love educating our students, it's very difficult to do that when we're mandated to teach to a certain test, to teach to a certain curriculum, because for their families and to know their, we talk about history, to know their history and why Edgewood has made state and national news in the past, and hopefully we can in a positive way do that again, and I know we can. We have to just work towards it, but I think a lot of it has to do with our teacher buy-in and our teacher attention, and we need to be training our teachers really well with the resources that we have. And you
my working conditions are their learning conditions.
Yes, exactly. And so if the teacher's happy, the student's happy. And if the students are happy, then they're willing, they love to come, and they love to learn.
And I was in Edgewood when we were the only school district out of 1,200 districts in the state of Texas, but I was on teaching, and we ended up with a privately funded voucher program. Only Edgewood was selected. That tells you a lot back then. But what we did.
So I want to go back to the broken system perspective. And so, studying education history, I would argue, and many researchers would argue that the education system is working as intended, right? I don't know. Many people don't know that our education system it's a two-tier system from the very beginning. They call it the Jeffersonian way of thinking. The idea that there's two tiers of people, two tiers of society. There's the lower working class, and then there's the upper, ruling class.
Differently educated
yes.
class.
And so I think the idea that we need to think about why we're educating our students and for what reason is important, especially in Edgewood, because sure, the students are getting an education or schooling, but what are we educating them to do? Are we educating our students to work for somebody else or to start their own business? Are we educating our students to go to college or to immediately go into a trade? Now, I'm not opposed to trades. However, I'm going to reflect what was spoken about last night is if you do want to go into a trade, that's okay. However, you still should get a college education, because that opens the doors for being a business owner. That opens the doors for you to have secure finances. That opens the doors to networking. So I think, the state is pushing CT courses, which I am a CT teacher, which is great. However, we cannot lose focus on the short-term benefits of a CT of a trade, and the long-term benefits of a high school college education. And so I think that's where I'm going to kind of say we need to constantly think of not just what we're teaching our students, but for what purpose are we teaching our students.
Okay, and we continue to talk about the students, but in my field, in my experience, Frank, what are we doing with the community, with the parents? What are we doing with them?
Well, there's a lot of communication, constant communication, whether it's through the parent portal, through social media, of course, all the platforms, even regular old-fashioned paper hard copy. So it's being sent out. Now, what our parents, our community do with that, we see where we get some participation, not as much as we'd like to, of course.
Correct.
We have, let's say, 8,000 students, and so that equates to so many parents, so many guardians, grandmothers, grandfathers. We'd like to see them, right? We want their input. We want their feedback. We host a lot. We host a lot of events. We could give you numbers where it's in the thousands as far as events per year that are held in Edgewood at all levels, elementary, middle, and high school.
And you mentioned right now the approximately 8,000 kids, and I want to throw this in just for our viewers, for our listeners. Mom and Dad's house, right across the street from Madonna Center, right there in San Martin Borders, okay? So it still stands. I remember, I'm not exaggerating, 80 kids, because the next door neighbors had 8 kids. They had 12, they had 10, they had 6, we were 4, everybody. Right now, that same house that Mom and Dad's still there. I lost my parents. I lost Dad a year ago. Right? It's the same house. No child There isn't a child living in those houses. Ya quedaron nomás los viejitos. So of course our enrollment is going to drop. People do not have 10 kids anymore, 8 kids anymore.
Can I mention something about that? So that is an active discussion on is education in the business of bringing more kids into our district, or is it in the business of educating the kids that are already here? Now, I've heard several ways that it's not necessarily a problem that there's less enrollment, but it does have to. We do have to pivot. We do have to respond to that declining enrollment. And now, we get paid to educate. We don't necessarily get paid to. Or when I say we, I mean the districts. Do we have? Well, there's no funding to go out and say, hey, we're going to go market all over the city, all over the state to bring kids to us. That's kind of what universities do. That's kind of what, even a lot of our charter schools do. However, public education, and from my understanding, is we're meant to educate the community that is within our district boundaries, whether it grows, which is a good thing, whether it shrinks, which may also be a good thing. It all depends, because instead of having a large program, we can pivot to a smaller, more in-depth program or quality program. And so I think it's kind of a misnomer to say that declining enrollment is a bad thing. It's just a natural thing that occurs. Populations grow, populations shrink, and I will mention, myself as a millennial, there is a connection with our economic state right now and our education system, and population not wanting to have as many kids anymore because it is so expensive. So there is a tie to economics and education that I think is often overlooked. That when we know, hey, if I have a kid, it's going to cost me so much a year, and people my age and younger can barely afford to pay the rent, can barely afford to have food, that also plays into it. So I think there's a bigger discussion on economics that kind of filters down into our education system.
If I can say this too, Northside recently announced that they were also going to be shutting down schools for the same reasons. They have a decline in enrollment. So it's universal. Everybody's suffering from it right now. And you're right. It's too expensive to have kids these days. So yes, and it will continue.
And I will say I'm going to be very careful. The perspective of school choice has not helped our public education system, and I'll leave it at that. The vouchers did not help our public education system.
You see, and that's where, when in 1999, that privately funded voucher came in with Dr. James Arlinger, when they came into Edgewood, and we started educating the community, we were able to hold on to our families because we were educating the community. The parents themselves were saying, well, I sent my gifted child and nothing's happening, or they did not accept my special ed child. They did not accept my Spanish speaking child. Or I have 4 children and I received a letter for the 3 of them, but the other one, they didn't even want to look at that child.
And I think that's a conversation that also needs to be had, is that we take everybody. Public schools, we take everybody. And we'll give you the services that you need. We give you the services that you're entitled to legally. If they're not public schools, then they have that choice to say, we don't want you, we want this person.
Last week, there was a nun on TV, and she said, if your child has special needs, they're better off in the public school system. Oh, how wonderful. Thank you. And my scores depend on the scores of everybody, but they get to handpick their students.
Exactly.
So, of course, they're excelling. Of course they are.
Exactly.
You see, but that's where educating the community comes in, and to me that is priceless. We've got to talk to our community. We've got to go into the schools.
Yeah, and I want to go back to what was mentioned earlier about what are we doing with the community. I don't think the issue is that we're having enough events, we're having enough education of the community. I think a lot of it is just that communication between the event and kind of getting people to realize how important it is. Because we live in there can be several events going on at the same time every day, and education is typically not on the highest priority until something goes wrong. that's when people show up. So when we have issues or when we have something coming up where we're trying to say, hey, we're having a town hall, this issue's coming up next year, 2 years, typically people don't start showing up until the month of, a month before, typically when we have to make a decision. And by then it's like, we've already done a year and a half of work because nothing happens fast in government. And that includes local government on the school board. So a lot of the conversations that we have are ongoing. However, it typically doesn't get public attention until the board meeting when people show up for public comment. And by then, we've already
becomes explosive.
And we've invested a lot of our time. We've invested a lot of our finances into getting the best information we can. And so I think that's what happens is that education, reform, education, politics is a constant. You have to be constantly in tune with it. But that's difficult because there's education, then we have our economy, like we mentioned earlier. There's all these other things that are pulling us away. And when are we going to have time to just have time with our own families, our own friends?
And in my youth, I was extremely active. Oh my! I could do everything, right?
You still can.
No, I don't want to. I don't want to. I'm done. But I was talking to you earlier, and you were giving so many other things that you're involved in. Please share with us some of the other things that you are involved in right now.
And then we took a bus back from Vegas to the movie. And you see everything is
So I do a lot
Sorry, we're at a restaurant. Yvonne needed cream.
Thank you, Diana.
for the last 30 years I've done volunteer work. I'm working at Valero, for example, for 25 years. I was able to do a lot in inner city. That was my focus. So our volunteer council, we specifically came to the inner city to help revitalize through United Way, through Valero. They would do a whole field, the baseball field, the park, the children's shelter down the street here. There's so many organizations that we help. Boys and Girls Club.
And you're coaching right now?
And I'm coaching kids right now.
Yeah.
It's teaching them life skills, self-esteem, confidence, and it's really a good feeling to see the transformation from day one to now it's week.
And you're
6.
coaching what, right?
2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th graders.
Soccer?
Just running a run club. So I've always done stuff at the high level as far as okay, let's vote on what we need for the YMCA, for example, getting the funds from the city and the state or whoever to redo our pool, to redo the parking lot. So with the right contacts, the right resources, we're able to do that. So on top of that, just I'm working with the Science Center with the diabetes pilot project for adolescents. That's I like that. It's gratifying, right? You do it because it's the right thing to do, right? It's not because I'm getting paid millions of dollars.
That's
Absolutely. So you have to be selfless.
I was telling Richard before we had degreed certified coaches and music teachers and librarians. The classroom teacher, did it all. And I was in charge of the yearly track and field meetings. And I remember saying, okay, look, from here to there, that's 50 meters. That's all walking. Okay, you're a big kid. Come on, I need you for the tug of war. And I did all of that. That was before we had anyone certified.
And you're doing the right thing. Right?
Multitasking.
That's what it's about, right? You want to try to help our kids, our scholars, every way you can. And that's what Edgewood is about. It's just, like you said, community. How do we get the word out? And it's constant communication. Like I said, through the portals, through social media, through actual hard copy. That stuff, we put it out there, but we need our parents to also meet us halfway. And that's hard. That's hard when they're working 12, 14-hour days, right?
When I started teaching in 74, I knew that I had to complete that up with that parent. I knew it. There was no way that a child was going to be rude or out of line because that parent would be right there at the door with my windows open, the doors open, the air conditioning, but that parent was right there standing. Come here. Oh man, that was good. Now Society has changed.
It's different. It is very different from when I was going to school. I respected, I obeyed.
Darn right we respect it and obey. Darn right.
Now it's different.
Okay, so that's where you guys, as the top administrator, board members, you know, those parents are struggling, the parents are working, the parents are, you know, maybe not educated in how to teach their own children, you know, so you're it's tough out there, it's tough out there.
Well, you want to mention what you said earlier. 10 minutes.
Oh, yes.
Well, with our kids, it's as simple as getting our parents, guardians, tias, tios, primos, whoever. This is what I did with my cousins that were struggling academically. But 10 minutes a day reading, 10 minutes a day math. Simple, I guess, tasks with, okay, how many dollars do I have in my hand?
Oh,
how many
I
nickels?
could
How many
talk about that
quarters?
forever.
Right, but it's very helpful.
Yeah.
Even as an adult, I think you should
I
do
would
it.
tell my gifted children, how much does a baby weigh? A tiny baby, you know, 1 pound. They look, get your weenies, you know, and I would always say, look, hold a pack of weenies. Okay, right here. Okay, hold some bacon. Okay, the baby weighs that. No. Common sense with our parents. Some of them were not socially, not educationally, and really some of them just don't make the time with them.
Well, it's
And that's tough on you guys, and that's even worse on the teachers, because their scores depend on that teacher.
and I think I mean we know in education it starts at the home, and I spend a lot of my time in my research looking at education is a social process and what I mean by that is education has values. What do we value as educators? What do we value as families? If we value being able to count, if we value being able to be respectful of people, then that's what you're going to see in our communities. However, with the change, right, with social media and all these other things, our students are getting so many messages to what should be valuable. And the problem is, if we don't spend that 10 minutes with our kids reading or doing math when they're young, I mean, when they're babies, you know, reading to them, singing to them, playing with them, and letting them play, then, then they're going to have, they're going to be confused when they start interacting with students from across the city, across the state, across the world, because now they have access through social media. They have access to students across the world now.
We
And
used
that
to
is
have a
something that is-
program in Edgewood, program in Edgewood. They would get 14, 15, 16-year-old kids from Edgewood students. They trained them, they gave them the tools to play, to work, to add, to add really, because it was for 2, 3-year-olds. And these kids would go into the houses, and the parents were observing the kids. So the parents were learning how to deal with their own children.
Yeah.
You see, we had wonderful programs.
Well,
We had them.
I'm hesitant. Like I can appreciate what we have. The problem is, I also need to understand as being on the board now is what can we do, because we cannot. And then I'm agreeing with you. We do need those things. However, it's gonna look different. And the thing is, many of the things we do, education needs to look different, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to fit a 150-year-old model into the big 2026, and it's not working. That's the issue. The issue is that we're trying to fit a model that has been outdated for a long time into the lives of our Gen Z and Gen Alpha, that grew up with the internet at the palm of their hand from day one.
Part of that too, sir, if I may interrupt.
Yes.
Part of it too is that it's like I said, we as an older generation, I refer to older programs that work for us, and everything has changed since. And that's what I'm saying is that when we do bring up the idea of certain programs, we all know they have to be updated. They have to match the level of the child.
Yes.
Because they're not going to be interested in what we learned.
And what hasn't changed, though, I don't think what's ever going to change, is that as long as we show up and we spend time with our students and our families, that's one thing that we have not replaced yet. Even though we have phones, iPads, all these other things, we still cannot replicate. Like I mentioned earlier, if me and Frank show up to a community and we spend time with them, We can't replace that with a computer. We can't replace that with something.
Face to
Not
face.
yet.
Face
But
to face.
face is still
It's
the
what they
the
want.
one-to-one connection is still the number one way that you're going to change people's mind.
You know, one of my nieces was having issues learning the multiplication table. And I asked her, I go, why are you having trouble with multiplication? I mean, it's easy. Well, it was to me the way we learned. How did we learn? You sat down, you wrote it and wrote it and wrote it, and you learned it, right? Whether it was memorizing it or not, that's how I learned it, okay? But I kept doing it, I kept doing it. So one day I told her, you know what? For 10 minutes, do all the ones. Do all every day we did. By the week's end, I could ask her, and she would tell me right off the bat. And she looked at me like, wow. I didn't know I could learn it that fast, and I said, "Mira, it's repetitious, you know."
And I think it's the skills. Repetition is also a really good way that we learn things. It's one of them, right?
Mm-hmm. But that's how we learn.
But that, yeah, exactly.
Yes, that's
And
the
so-
difference.
Yeah, exactly. And so it works. We know repetition works to learn things like things you just have to memorize.
Mm-hmm.
The way that the world has moved, education has and should move, and this is what our businesses are asking for and our universities are asking for. Because I also chair a committee in another district, is they're saying that we love that you're training your students to know these calculations, to know how to read, to know how to do these things. The problem is we need students that also know how to present. We also need students that also know how to go and talk to somebody, because that's what we're looking for. Because again, we live in what's called a globalized society, where I can hire somebody remotely from across the world, and they're competing with you right down the street. That's the type of world we're living in, because the skills that got us through the past several generations have changed. Even though the social skills are still the same, we still need to know how to talk to somebody, and I think the rote memory skills are also still important. However, there's also a lot more to learn now in a year. Teachers are also oversaturated with how much they have to get into a student's brain. So at a time where we can spend a month on multiplication, now you got a week. Because you need to move on to teach the next
It's not memorization anymore. Now it's cognitive. Okay, show me how you got that. Even on the reading and writing part.
Yes.
When they test now on that test, that STAR test.
I think most of us would struggle on current day's testing.
Yes.
I've seen the tests, and they're tough.
Well, and and we mentioned this before with some teachers. So back when I learned how to do it, and I got the right answer.
Yeah.
But they told me that's not the way you do it.
Right.
And I said, okay, but I got the right answer. And they're like, no, it doesn't work that way. There's a formula. You have to work according to the formulas. If your formula is not correct,
Right.
most of the time it's going to be wrong.
Well, and that's STAR, right? So then let's talk about STAR.
Yeah.
Our kids have to perform. They have to meet that, right? Meet that standard. Yeah. It's hard on them. It really is. And our teachers. It is.
I've seen more than a few teachers break down during STAR testing. These are teachers, and I've seen more than a few students start crying the day of.
Do you know that
testing,
when my children were little, I would take them to the doctor periodically for whatever, and the doctors would always say, "Tell us a date." Because we have to have more staff members here because kids come in sick every single year. Every year, during those 2 weeks, the stress on those kids.
Yeah.
And I said, "You're kidding me? That never crossed my mind." Tell us what date.
and it goes all the way to the top, because everyone feels it, all the way even to us, as because we get evaluated. Because on those STAR tests, they say you're failing or you're passing. So we feel all the pressure from the top down, from the bottom up, from the students to the board members.
Well, that brings up another point. Okay, and I'm sorry.
No, you're
No.
Dr. Ramos, but
I love being interrupted.
so I'm sorry. But okay, so the state, of course, they give us our state gives us the accountability ratings, right? So that's based on 3 domains. Okay? That's how we get scored. Now, our kids here in Edgewood, they're high poverty, right? Bilingual, ESL, SPED. So that one student's score could weigh as many as 22 times across these 3 domains. So if that child missed 10 days, 10 school days out of the year, and they show up test day and they fail, okay? because they didn't get the instruction that they needed to pass that SAR test, then that hurts us. Because 1 or 2 kids it's gonna be a huge gap that we have to try to overcome in, let's say, 3 months or 6 months, right? Because middle of the year, we like to think that we know where we are, and when you have those 2 kids that just they pop in there and then they bring your score down, then that's where it looks like if we don't have a quality education there for our kids, but we do. And I see that firsthand. I'm there. I see the scores inside our system that you can see like a 20-30% increase on our kids. Whether it's 3rd, 5th, 4th, 5th, right? Because that's when you start looking at SAR. So that means something to me. It's just how do you show that to everybody else? And I don't think we get enough credit for that.
I was on a committee once upon a time, many committee, but one of the committees I was on, it was make a list of zero cost, low cost items for teachers. And do you know that we made a list, and do you know that we would get calls because the teachers would say, I notice a difference already. Simple little things.
I want to talk about. I agree. I want to talk about the finance a little bit more because I want to relate that to the actual day-to-day costs. So Edgewood, we're about half of our students are chronically absent. So what does that mean? You know what that means?
Money.
Well, it means that. Well, I'm just saying, just the definition. What is a chronically absent student? They miss. I think it's either 10 to 12 days a year, or more than that. Okay. So the problem with that is to stay afloat. For a district to actually fund itself right now, we need a minimum 92% ADA. We need at least 92 of our students to show up every day. Do we have
that's
that?
our target.
And
but
for that
is our
I
target.
always thought of having a school within school.
Well, here's the thing. Remember I mentioned earlier, the government doesn't work that fast. So, so and the thing is, I'm glad you mentioned that because this is current, the 1882 partnerships that we're allowed to have, that was the idea, to have a school, specialized schools within our own schools. Now, people agree with it, people don't agree with it. However, the state has also tied funding to these partnerships. So we have to balance, do we want to partner and do we want to have these partners pretty much employ our teachers, or do we want to keep using the funding that we don't get through our attendance for ADA?
And I was just to say it, I always talk about Kennedy High School. I said, Kennedy High School, I would bring in the child and I would say, do you want to be successful? Do you want to be program? If not, you go upstairs. Vamos. The day you decide that you want to be part of the program, you come
And
downstairs.
teachers can't do that anymore.
No, but how simple to put it on the kid.
Well, and let me ask.
He's the child that's keeping me, the teacher, from teaching the kids.
And let me ask you, what if every teacher in a building, this is the systemic part, I want to bring it back to systemic. If every teacher sent out one student, how many students would be? That would be about over 100 students every day.
Fill a couple of classrooms.
Yes, so I'm trying to bring the teacher perspective, which I have, the one classroom perspective, to the district-wide perspective.
Well, that was our magnet school, the one that I got to teach at, and it was amazingly wonderful. And then I'm going to tell you that as the GT socialist at my campus, that wonderful school, I taught every single time, and my kinder kids knew how to type correctly.
And here's the thing, I'm gonna keep zooming us out because we're not the classroom. We have to think about the whole district, and I want to mention this as far as teacher retention. When one teacher leaves, it affects the whole district. But I would even argue that administrators don't even realize that. That when I mention teacher retention, we need administrators that hear a teacher, hey, I can't do this, I'm thinking of resigning. They need to say, hey, how can we help? But what I've seen and what I've heard is, you're resigning? Okay, see you. Good luck. And we have to value our teachers.
You see, and I used to take care of, I did it all in the I used to do good
You're probably next right. Everything.
And they would call me from the main office. Ben Gutierrez, I don't know if you've ever heard the name. Ben Gutierrez, he was in charge of hiring. And he would call me up and say, hurry, and I have a teacher here right now who's reasoning. And I would take off. And it was so simple. He would fix the problem right there.
Yes. 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 Yeah.
Well, let's go. Sorry, let's go back to what was then, and what was when I was there. What was there, and then now
today.
James,
And then today.
and now our kids.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's
Bless you.
this last legislative update. It was over 1,000 pages, and that our administration has to go through. Okay, what do we have to adhere to now? What are these mandates? And mind you, some of these are not funded. The police officers they wanted at every school after the Uvalde shooting. The state gave us $50,000 a year. That's all. So that might cover one police officer. Okay? So we need at least 15 officers for our campuses, right? How are we going to do it? Who's funding that? Go back to when they installed cameras in the buses. The state says you gotta have cameras. Well, who funded that? Well, not the state.
I was in charge of a grant. I had already retired. I was in charge of a grant, and it was cameras for officers and the computers for our. They love me. Every age group loved me.
But those are the obstacles, right? Those are the battles.